Worried about mom or dad falling? The Symphony Medical Alert System from CVS Health helps make their home safer, even if you can't be there. Symphony works with voice activation or a care button they can opt to wear, along with smart sensors for coverage around the home. With 24/7 emergency response and an app to tie it all together, you can monitor your loved one's well-being for enhanced peace of mind. Terms and conditions apply. Learn more about Symphony at cvs.com/symphony or find it at your nearest CVS Health Hub.
To Spartans, there is no finish line for excellence. Little wonder MSU is a leading research university in the world's top 100. With 34 programs ranked in the top 25 nationally by U.S. News & World Report, and #1 programs in nuclear physics, supply chain management, and education, we are united by a passion to make a difference. See all we're making possible at msutoday.msu.edu. Spartans will.
So I'm in this situation where I'm really far away from home. I can't get off of this boat. It's raining, so I'm trying to be down below so I'm not getting rained on. And the engine is just cranking away, and it's hot. And I'm literally like almost lose it. And I go up, and I'm standing up on that deck. And I still, to this day, remember just being up there and thinking,
Hey folks, welcome to today's episode. This is part 2 of what was part 1 on Monday, last Monday, which was Jerome Rand's crazy figure 8 sailing experience around the world. He's already sailed around the world once, totally solo, unbelievable journey, 270-something days, and he talked about that in an episode 644, I believe it was. It's in the show notes. Check that out. I really encourage you to check out that first episode and then part 1 of the most recent update, and then now is part 2. So Jerome is awesome. We were able to meet in person. That doesn't happen a lot, but it was really good. But we start out part 2. We basically just split the interview in half, and I'm actually telling a couple stories right off the get-go, so I'm talking a little more than usual in this part 2 episode, but then Jerome gets right into some pretty incredible stories. So let's jump in that. But before we do, I wanted to make you aware we've got a new sponsor, someone that's helping make this show happen, and that is Gooder Sunglasses. You may have heard of them. They're very bold colored. They're beautiful. They're very affordable. They actually say the 4 F's of the Gooder solution is the 4 F's. It's fun, fashionable, functional, and affordable. That's what I'm talking about. If you know me, you know that I like a good deal on things, and I'm not about to drop full price for some $300 pair of sunglasses that I'm only going to lose or break or run over on my bike or my kid's going to step on. You know, anything can happen to sunglasses. I don't want anything to happen to them. So that's why I like Gooder Sunglasses. They do free shipping on $50 or more, 30-day returns. They got a 1-year warranty. And I honestly love the bold colors and the bold styles. They look awesome. My wife and I both wear Gooder sunglasses, like legitimately, we really do. And the cool thing is they're around, $25 or $35 for really good sunglasses. So if you'd like to support me and support the folks that support the show, and treat yourself to a great pair or 2 or 3 of Gooder sunglasses, go to gooder.com and use the code ASP15 for 15% off. That's Gooder, GOODR.com. Use the code ASP for Adventure Sports Podcast. 15 at checkout, you get 15% off. Trust me, your face, your eyes, they will thank you.
Because I was going to say, if you said no, I was going to say statistically that's got to be impossible.
Dude, yeah. So it is, the more people, I know plenty of cyclists that have been hit and killed.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like motorcycles. Like it's just kind of a higher percentage of folks. But this summer we did this ride, and it wasn't a pure bike touring coast to coast. It was just like not a guided, but it was like a marketing thing we were doing. So we had a van that was the support van, and it was all, outfitted and had the logo on the, the company. We were doing a lot of beer, passing out the beer and filming it, and making a big deal about it as much as we could. despite COVID, we'd had to keep our,
Right.
distance, but we were making it a thing. And so I was more of like the van driver, me and this other guy, Nick. And so we would recruit cyclists based on where we were. We would, we have a sales rep in Chicago. We'd have them bike across Illinois or sales rep. And so we just had our employees, our coworkers really commit to like pretty much state lines, like bike from this state to this state, and they would carry a beer tap across the country. Like literally.
Oh, no way. Like the Olympic torch.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
The Olympic keg.
Yeah, the Olympic
beer tap
baton is what it was. But so at the end of one of the days in Iowa, man, I was like, one of the guys who was riding, he knocked out like 120 miles by like 1 o'clock.
Oh,
in the
wow.
afternoon. He was crushing. Chris, if you're listening, you killed it. And so I was like, hey, it's only one. Let me jump on the bike and I'll knock out, 20, 30 miles just to get a head start for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I got on the bike, man, and this was the first time I had ridden on the whole ride, and we were already halfway across the country. And so, but I had been behind, in the van for like 2 weeks. So I'm like, I want to get out there on the road.
Yeah.
Man, within like 10 minutes, this truck hit me going down the highway and hit me with its mirror going full speed. So just the mirror and the side of the truck scraped me, but the mirror hit me right in the back of right in the top of my back, like the shoulder essentially, and my neck. And it was wild. A few inches to the right, it would have killed me for sure. Yeah. And but now the mirror snapped off, hit me in the head, and just kind of broke into a bunch of pieces. But the truck never stopped or slowed down. It was going.
Just took right off.
No,
wow.
it never. It was
never
flying.
Wow.
It was flying. It was going 60, 70 miles an hour.
And Jeez, I wonder if the speed of it helped because
it was going fast enough.
Shattered the whole thing.
I'll be honest. It didn't. Just imagine a vehicle driving and you get hit with the mirror. It sounds like it'd be really painful, and it was painful. But it was like, you ever had someone just really slap you as hard as they could in the back? Like, I don't know. Like a college frat guys do that. My dad used to do it. Just hit us in a funny way. That sounds bad.
Yeah, right.
But he was a little rough, but just slap you in the back. That's kind of what it felt like. But I was pretty sore, but it really wasn't that big a deal. It was just realizing how close it was.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because that's the thing. You pass bicycles not on the freeway, but on the highways and stuff where the speed limit's 55, and I'm always just thinking, whoa, it's just so close.
You're this far from cars.
I know.
Like all day.
I know.
You have
like
on a cross country ride. I don't even know what this. You probably have tens of thousands of opportunities to get killed. The whole time, every car that goes by, people. You look around when you drive anywhere. It's mind blowing how many people are looking down, like at their phones.
Yeah, that's sort of the scary new thing,
But that same town, I went and talked to some cops afterwards to report it because it was a hit and run.
Yeah.
And in the van, so we had a support van, but it was like 10 miles up the road. So
right.
They didn't see anything. This person couldn't have known I was with that group or with that athletic Bruin, but it was wild, man. But we reported it, and the cop was like, yeah, we've had 3 people this week, cyclists, get killed in this town.
Wow.
And 2 of them were bike tours, like going cross country.
Really?
One of them was in the running for the mayor of Jackson, Wyoming. Yeah.
Huh.
Just super normal people, man. Just out for one was out for like a morning ride. Terrible. Got hit by this nurse, this lady a single mom who's a nurse and just tired, I guess, fell asleep at the wheel. So it was really bad situations all around. But
and you worry about me?
I don't know.
Out to an empty ocean.
That's what I'm saying. It's a completely like help. Where is help? Where is help? Is I guess my.
Well, that's obviously there's none of that. There's no cell phone reception.
I feel like I got it hit, so the car's behind. If I would have been like demolished, I feel like cars would have stopped and helped. But then it doesn't matter because you're dead. So
I always think it's just so funny because and then you take another guy like Alex Honnold.
Alex Honnold climbs.
It's sort of interesting. I've never been able to talk to him, but it would be kind of cool just to chat, just because, I do my trips untethered, and it pales into comparison to what he's doing. But there's still that same sense about when you make that mistake. If you're going to make a mistake, you're pretty much, that's it. It's game over. There's this focus that comes about you. And, but at the same time, that's the only thing I have in common with that guy. It makes my palms sweat just thinking about climbing untethered up something like that.
No, man.
Ugh.
Well, what scares me about the ocean was we had a guy on the show. This was before I was host. It's a famous story. I'm just forgetting his name. He wrote a book. He was sailing across, I think, a race across the Atlantic.
Yeah,
and he was in a life raft.
Callahan, I think.
Yeah, he was in a life raft. They've done like
days or
70 something days. Yeah. And I've listened to the episode, but Discovery Channel put it together like a little mini doc. It was on a show.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched it like 2 weeks ago, and it just randomly got recommended. And it was a reenactment. It was actually a pretty good actor reenacted. It was like, dang, this feels pretty real. Because a lot of those are pretty cheesy, but he was laying there in his cabin just sleeping.
Yeah.
And then water gushing in.
Boom. He still doesn't know. He never knew what actually happened, whether he hit something or, if just because he built that boat himself.
Man, I got to show you something about like hitting random stuff. Unbelievable.
People ask me that one a lot. Holy cow.
But what scared me to death about that, because my wife and when we go down to that marina, it's like, man, this is tempting. These boats are a lot less than houses. You know what I'm saying? Like, this
you're doing risk assessment now.
That's what. Yeah, it's like that would be so cool. And you're obviously be someone I would reach out to. Like,
totally.
What does it take? Because we know people like SV Delos.
Yeah.
We've had them on the show. They're a family that lives out there. They're like, it was two couples.
They do some real sailing.
Yeah.
Holy smokes!
They do some crazy stuff. But what scared me so much about Steven's experience, it just was like 3 minutes, and his boat was
swamped and
it was like, oh my, 3 minutes. Like, how that would take me enough time to grab my. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so scary to think your window's that small.
Yeah,
and your protection's that small. I don't know. That's what scares me.
It's the middle of the night. Well, just a quick story. When I was learning to do like offshore stuff.
Okay, yeah.
We were down in Australia with a school called Flying Fish, and we were building our sea miles. And the year before, they had been out, and it was like a 40-foot Beneteau or something that they were using. I think there were maybe 6 people on board. And they were 15 miles or so off the coast of Australia, north of Sydney, and the keel fell off. And the boat sank within, I think, like a minute. And
what?
I believe it was three of them survived and swam to shore. And the other 3 went down because the ship, it just went down like a rock. I mean, when the keel falls off, you've just got this gaping hole in the bottom of your boat. And it was just like, wow. I heard that story. I was just thinking to myself, it can happen, blink of an eye. I'm looking at your eyes all wide and like, holy smokes, you shouldn't have told me that.
It's so,
but that's super rare.
Super rare. We're just going to move in an RV. That was like my thing, where it's like, tire could blow out and we flip us. That's possible.
Here's the good news. The good news is that you can, if you're prepared to take it a little slower out on the ocean like I do, you can buy a boat where they're built so strong. My boat, Mighty Sparrow West Sail 32, it's not fast, but it would take literally a container ship to hit me to sink that thing. And there's stories about container ships hitting West Sails, and the West Sail just bounces off of it.
Jeez,
it's just cosmetic. So there are boats out there that, I could run mine aground and just leave it there for a year and come back and just sail it right off.
You're just an expert on all this. So I want to ask while I'm here, because I've only been here like 6 months. And so we go hiking, or there's all these preserves or beaches, and there's just boats aground tilted.
Oh, right.
What is that? Who delete? Why are the boats left?
Pretty much, it's sort of one of the tragedies that's come along with fiberglass boats. Old wooden boats, you still would have seen, 50 years ago or something, I'm sure you would have seen the same thing. But those boats decompose and break apart and turn into debris. Now with fiberglass, these boats basically will last 100 years sitting on a beach because fiberglass.
And there's no way to
they have to be yanked off. I mean, essentially, these are boats that are either abandoned on purpose because people can't afford them anymore, or somebody anchors their boat and they're like, and then they just take off and they.
Yep, I see them for free on Craigslist all the time. It's hey, if you can dig it out, you can have it.
Right, exactly.
What is that? Is it not worth it?
No. Well, and I get this a lot when people are trying to they think they want to change their lives and go get a boat. The problem is a boat, no matter if somebody gives you a free boat, they're basically handing you a very expensive bill.
Like a horse.
Even though you don't have to pay for the boat, you still have to pay for moving it, where it's going to stay, all that sort of stuff.
Fixing it up if it's damaged.
Yeah. And most of those boats, those could be leftovers from hurricanes and things like that.
Totally.
The Caribbean is still littered with boats from Hurricane Maria and Hurricane Irma, and that was 2017. I mean, littered. There's still places where there's 100, 150 foot old cargo vessels that are still stuck on the land in the BVI. So
it's just like it's a whole culture, man. That the language, the people in it. It's like walking. It's like near here's Ocala, and it's like horse culture. It's like a whole world. That we were in it, and like you just get a look, and you're like, oh my god, I had no idea all this was going on. Conferences and well-known figures and books, and it's like you get in this sailing world. It's like the same thing. It's like wow, there's a whole world that it's right on the edges of society because it's on the water, and it's just crazy, man. It's really cool,
and it sort of splinters in, if you think you're confused talking to like just a regular sailor, talk to somebody who races sailboats. And even I'm sitting there going, all right, wow, I'm not really catching what he's talking about. But it's only because I've had a lot to do with racing when I was, working at the bitter end and stuff, but I've never been like an actual sailboat racer. I'm a cruiser. I think is what you would call me. But
hey, that's our pace. That's my pace. I same with cycling. I don't race at all. It's a whole world talking about stuff I don't really care for or think about, and it's just like I'm really out there to cruise around and see stuff, talk to people, and
just racing the season.
Have stories. Yeah,
Get out of Alaska before the winter comes in.
Let me show you this, and we can.
We got?
All right, so here we partially helped sponsor this team to row across the Atlantic this year.
Oh, nice!
The Talisker Whiskey Challenge. I don't know if you ever.
Yeah, wasn't there? How many were in there?
There's like 30, 40 teams. So that's the team we helped called Latitude 35, and they're just getting some free plug-in. But they were like promoted by Lance Armstrong, and just they got second place.
Oh wow!
But I don't show that to you to just tell you about them. I show it to you to see if you've ever heard of anything like this happening. Where is it? Look at that. See that? Sticking up through the hole?
Ooh, what do we got?
So let me tell you.
Oh, is that a swordfish?
A swordfish.
The beak.
Beak went straight through their hole.
Uh-huh.
Right between the legs of one of the dudes sleeping on the mattress.
Oh, what are the chances
Dude, so
that?
Water just starts squirting up. Look at that's underneath.
Oh my gosh.
You see that? It's broken off pretty deep in there. Then they got to get down there and fix it, and they sawed it off flat. Isn't that crazy?
Well, they should have painted the bottom of that red.
Is that what it is?
It could be a theory, because when those fish, when they're chasing bait and stuff, I mean, they're moving really fast.
I think they're the fastest animals in the world.
Pretty close, yeah. I think I'd have to watch Planet Earth again, Blue Planet, but I want to say the sailfish might be. But no, it's sort of an interesting thing with my boat being, I paint the bottom of it red, and it sort of really stands out, I guess. And that's my thinking. It also is the same color as krill, So that's a little scary when the whales are around. But
yeah.
if you had a blue bottomed boat, I don't know. I wonder if it would blend in. As if you're a fish, would you not really see it if you're moving at 30 or 40 miles an hour? Chasing
blue marlin. Blue marlin, they said it was. I don't know how they can tell because all those beaks, I don't know, kind of look the same. I don't know. Right. They might be able to tell.
Okay. Because I had heard stories about swordfish fishermen, in the olden days in like wooden boats and things, I guess, getting their boats broken apart by them just because they're such powerful fish and they've got this big sword on the front of them. And, it's super dangerous trying to catch those things, pull them on your boat. I think the first thing they do is grab that thing and saw it off. Like modern day fishermen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Dude, that's
you never know what's gonna come up from.
Never
deep.
heard. No kidding, man. So I wonder if that's what happened to. Is it Steven
Callahan? It could have been
so
just some debris. I mean, literally off that coast, the current and the wind basically drives anything all south along that coast of the western coast of Africa. So it could have been, a refrigerator floating around out there for all he knows.
Have you ever seen something like that out there?
I've only seen smaller stuff. I've seen it in great abundance, in like south of Bermuda. The biggest stuff I saw was in the South Atlantic garbage patch. And some of it were like huge nets and things like that are all balled up. And I'm trying to think, maybe a 55-gallon drum or two. But normally those are like the plastic ones. So I've heard stories about containers. You get especially the refrigerated containers. And recently in the Pacific, there was some cargo ship that dropped like 1,600 containers in the water.
Yeah.
It's
a problem.
Oh, yeah. I mean, most of them are going to sink, but there are some that if they fall the right way and the contain what it has inside, jams up against the door or whatever, then all of a sudden it's just basically a mobile buoy out there that, if you smack into it. And again, at night you can't sit there with a flashlight and point it off the bow. That's just not realistic. So you just sort of chance it. But again, it's such a vast open place that the chances of you hitting something are so slim that it's not worth sitting there and worrying about. But when I start seeing debris and garbage floating, I know I'm in one of those gyres where, the current has brought everything together. And that's going to be your best opportunity for hitting something big. That or the shipping lanes. But I don't know. It's one of those things. It's like being out in the woods and thinking about bears. It's just going to freak you out.
Totally. It's one in a million.
Yeah.
Steve's story is popular because it's the exception. It's not.
It's like getting chased by a bison, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I still love that story. I've listened to it a couple times.
Man, I made that a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, I can't remember what number episode
cheesy.
that was.
I think it was a bonus episode. What I was trying to do is increase the skills of like storytelling. With sound effects and stuff just to see, but
right.
I don't know, man. This podcast has gone to so many different places and times, and it's settling into what it's always been and probably will continue to be. I might do a few more things like that, but
it was great.
I need more stories though.
I could just envision it. Yeah. Oh man.
Well, so we were talking before like daily tasks.
Oh yeah.
What do you do to just pass time? Is it hard to pass time, or is it?
Not for me. There's some situations where I'm sort of annoyed that I'm having to stay awake for longer than I want to because I'm dealing with like rain squalls and things like that.
And you have to stay awake for that?
Yeah, because the wind is shifting and changing, and that's the biggest thing, because if the wind all of a sudden cranks way up, you can't just leave those sails up there, or else you're going to break something or the boat's going to get really uncomfortable sort of stuff. But at the same time, if the wind drops off, then the boat gets really uncomfortable because it's now rolling and the sails are slamming. And again, that'll break stuff. So in a way, your job when you're out at sea by yourself is you're like the caretaker of like the lighthouse. You're always making sure everything's working okay and you're changing this, changing that. But in the meantime, a lot of it's just sort of waiting. And I have an affection for the sea to just be able to sit and watch and just observe the horizon and the waves and the birds and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. I could sit there for literally hours and just watch and listen to some music, or sometimes not. My favorite thing is to just have a nice medium breeze, and I'm sailing, across the wind, the boat's moving well, and I'm just in a comfortable sort of reclined position on the boat, not getting splashed. And I'm just able to just stare out there. And a lot of times I'm not even thinking about anything. It's like I'm just letting, all the visual just go right into my brain. And there's something about that. And I think anybody can do that, because you think about how much people want to and how much money they spend to go stay in a hotel that's on a beach.
Yeah.
The only difference between that hotel and any other one is that it's on the beach, and people will sit in those chairs and just stare out
it's
there.
It's like a campfire. You just stare at it. But it's the beach. Yeah, people, we go down all the time, and most people are going down there just to sit and look at it.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's amazing. It's
especially when you got nice rolling, waves coming in and stuff. I mean, as scary as it is when you get into pretty heavy weather, it's also beautiful. I mean, to see these big white caps and these big breaking waves, when they get up in the 20-foot range, it's impressive. It's noisy, and you're like, whoa, because it feels like the waves are maybe 40 feet. They always say that if you're on a boat, you want to cut in half the height that you think you see, because you're sort of in that moment. But if you're watching like a video of the waves from a boat, you're supposed to double it, because whenever you video, it never does any justice,
right?
Unless you're doing it from like a drone or something like that.
Man, that is so cool.
But cool. daily wise, yeah. I mean, you wake up, you have your coffee, so that's normal. Everybody does that.
How do you make your coffee?
I just use that French press sitting right over there. I actually,
oh wow,
I didn't have it on the AT, but I bought it shortly after, and it's plastic, so it's stood the test of time.
No kidding. Holy cow! That's what I use every morning, a French press.
Yeah,
I had to get a metal one.
Oh, really?
They come glass typically.
Yeah,
I've broken 5 or 6.
Yeah, I can't have one on the boat. Glass.
No, I can't imagine. Yeah.
Because if that breaks, I'm out of luck.
You got no coffee.
That cup of coffee
9 months.
The morning cup's not as essential as the I'm going to be up from 2 to 4 a.m. cup. Just knowing that that's a possibility when I have to be up that late, then it makes it all better. But you have your cup, maybe you have some breakfast, you do your boat checks, a few hours have gone by. And like I said, at noon, you got to do all the position reports and stuff. So I'm old school, so I'm doing it on a chart. And if the weather's good and I feel like it, I'll use the sextant to do the noon position. And it's not complicated. Once you've done it 100 or 200 times, it's pretty much just a couple calculations, measure the angle of the sun and stuff. But and then the afternoon, I usually read or just enjoy. And then you've always got the sundowner sort of cocktail hour. So you have 1 or 2 cocktails, and then sunset, and it's like, I don't know. Then it's nighttime, and you've got your stars, or if the weather's great, you just head right down and go to sleep. I mean, I've never understood people that go out by themselves and say they only sleep for 30 minutes at a time. Like, that sounds crazy.
Really?
Yeah, I don't understand. I would think that
just
would drive you into like a psychotic,
like monitor stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when I think back to my first solo trip, which was it was like 300 miles from the BVI to Dominica. I barely slept on that because it was my first time. I didn't know how this was going to work. There were other ships around, and I tried to do that, like 15, 20-minute cat naps, had a little alarm. And then I remember, I think it was the second night, really tired by that point, and set the alarm. And then I think I woke up like 3 hours later, and I was like, wow, okay, well, nothing happened.
It is wild. It's almost like you're got a car that's moving along and you're just
It's like being in a Tesla.
Sleep. Right,
yeah,
kind of a little scary.
Yeah. But it's one of those things you just have to sort of get used to it, and that's probably one of the biggest questions I always get is how do you sleep while that boat's moving and stuff. And again, it just goes back to once that boat is in its nice rhythm, it's almost like being in a little cradle. You're getting rocked. But as soon as anything changes, if you're rocking your baby to sleep, as soon as you stop, the baby wakes up. It's the same for me out on the boat. And, sometimes you accidentally sleep through something you shouldn't have, but it's pretty rare because you're never really, I've only been in like a really deep sleep, probably a handful of times where I'm having crazy dreams. I wake up, I do not know where I am, like, up to the cockpit, like what's going on, and then you sort of like, wow, I was really asleep. I must have been dead tired. Normally it's just under, your eyes are closed and your body's resting, but it's aware. You know what I mean?
Wow. Do you miss it?
Yeah, a little bit, but it's hard to miss when you live on the boat.
You miss it right now.
Yeah, because I've been down here for a week and I cannot wait to get back to my bunk.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, because the boat, I've set it up as best as I can for me living on. And when I live on it, when I'm on the dock, so I have two modes. I have offshore mode, which it changes how I set things up down below. But then dock mode is trying to make it into essentially a tiny house. There's decorations on the walls and. The computer's there and all this sort of stuff. And it's as comfortable as possible. And there's some nights where I just sit in there and I'm just looking around and I just love being on the boat. I don't know. A lot of sailors, I think after a big trip would probably get back and be like, ugh, I don't even want to see that thing. Right. When I finished my big trip, I was on the boat for, I think, 2 weeks in the boatyard. Just sort of cleaning it all out and putting it to bed, so to speak. But I wasn't in any big rush. Wow. Like I didn't go stay in a hotel or anything like that. So kind of weird, I guess, right?
I don't know. You make it sound so easy. Just not easy. It feels like you have found
your little thing. Happy place.
Yeah, your place. That's really cool.
When I do sort of daydream. I'd love to own a piece of land at some point, nothing huge, but maybe in Michigan or Vermont or something like that. Who knows? But when I think about, trying to like maybe build a cabin or something like that, I always circle back to just ship Sparrow over there and park it in the woods and just live on the boat. I've already got solar. I've got all the cooking. Everything is there. And I could just build like a front porch. But then everybody just is like, oh, here goes Ted Kaczynski over there. He's going to live on his boat in the woods. But I don't see it that way.
Right. No, that's not a bad idea. I'd say the marinas a lot. There's like different types of marinas I'm learning. There's like the real ritzy ones. And there's like almost a more grungy one close by too, where it's like people are working on the boats. And it's just a little more blue collar looking. And it looks like there's some folks living on the boats too. Yeah,
so that would be if the boats are out of the water. That's sort of classified as a boatyard. And it's interesting because a lot of the marinas and boatyards and stuff are sort of in this transitional state where I think some big companies are starting to buy up all the little marinas, and it's becoming harder and harder to find those small, inexpensive places where you can live aboard on your boat, year round if you want there. And with the boatyards, it's definitely becoming more scarce to find one that you can live on your boat in the boatyard and do the work on your boat yourself. Because a lot of them, they'll say, well, you can be in here, but you can't live on the boat. And if you do like the bottom paint, the boatyard has to do it. So you have to pay them to do it, sort of thing. And so sort of the old days of that being more commonplace, but there still are enough of them where you can still find them. I mean, those are the places I look for, the grungy ones.
Yeah, that seemed a little more like
they're way more
style.
Fun.
Yeah, it's just like there was a bunch of there's young folks, there's old folks, all just working, and they've got their stuff underneath the boat and riding bikes up and down the road, and I'm just like, it's a
community.
People are really getting ready for adventures or whatever it is. they're working on something. It's cool to see.
And everybody's sort of sharing information and all that stuff. I would equate it to, I guess, being in maybe like an RV park in some respects.
Yes.
Where, people are still moving and doing things and going places and all that. It wouldn't be like like a trailer park where everybody's just sitting there and nobody goes anywhere. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but like a lot of boats, though, definitely don't move. They will find their dock, and some people just like to live on sailboats. Just
that water and that.
There's a few at the marina I'm at that'll probably never move. Wow. And it's just a form of like a tiny house.
Yeah, but the boat it's meant for.
It's meant to move. Yeah.
But it won't. So that's interesting. That's cool.
That's
cool. It seems really appealing at times. It seems fun, like a tree house or something. It's yours. It's cozy.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things I've thought about is if I got to the point where I wasn't using Sparrow the way she's meant to be used, like if I'm not going offshore and doing bigger passages, I would want to sort of sell it to somebody who wanted to do that. Just because, the boat really belongs out in the ocean. And to replace it, you'll find some like 60-foot old clunker that you're really not going to take offshore because it's a little past its expiration date. But think all the room you can. I mean, we're talking a boat as big as this house. Yeah. It's like, they are quite a ticket, though, as far as trying to fix them up and at least make sure they don't sink. So
that's the big one, man. That's the big one. Hold.
Look around you. That car you're driving, that house your family lives in, making your daughter laugh, inspiring her to dream. You did that. Teaching your son to drive, teaching him he can be anything, all you. And your dreams for tomorrow, you'll do that too. Legacies don't just happen, they are made by you. The important word being you. American Family Insurance, protecting your dreams as you achieve them. Insure carefully, dream fearlessly.
Products not available in every state. American Family Mutual Insurance Company, SI, and its operating companies, American Family Life Insurance Company, 6000 American Parkway, Madison, Wisconsin.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.
To close it up, what is in the future for you? What do you have kind of going around in that brain?
It's hard because, like I said, and I always run into this, is that I already have the boat, and the boat is so purpose built for doing these big epic trips. And one of the things I ran into on this last one was eventually I just didn't want to be out there anymore because the trip was sort of ruined, and I was like, I'm feeling just stuck. My mind started going places it shouldn't have gone. And I realized that if you're going to isolate yourself on a boat and do one of these big trips, you really better want to be out there. I mean, you have to be 100% committed, because if there's even a little bit of doubt, then that's going to start to grow, or it can at least, if things don't go your way. And, with the first trip, I was 100% dead set on doing that for 5 years beforehand. And I never faltered. It never even for a second crossed my mind that I might not want to do it. And I think that carried over into, the entire trip. And then, because there were only maybe a couple of times where I ever even considered like, maybe there's an escape route here. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. But those were really tiny and they didn't last. But I would like to, as far as like deadpan plans, there's this crazy story from our family way back, mid 1800s to like 1820s, 1830s, I think. My great-great-great-grandfather was on the ships that would do the nitrates trade. So they'd leave from Europe, go down the Atlantic, and they'd go around Cape Horn backwards up into the Pacific, and they'd mine the guano. the bird poop.
Yeah.
And they'd bring it back because the fields in Europe were basically barren. They'd, over-farmed for so many centuries. And so the nitrates were basically fueling the food. And so when he was, I think, the second mate on a ship, so a younger man, went on a trip and they had picked up all the stuff from some island. We don't know which one it was, but as they're sailing back to go to Cape Horn and go back to Europe, they passed by 2 more islands that weren't in the pilot book. Like nobody knew where they were or what they were, but they were covered in it. And so my great-great-great-grandfather got dropped off with another guy, and they were left on the island to guard it. And they were going to sail back to Europe, and then they would come back and pick them up. So literally, we're talking like a year later. And fortunately, 9 months later, another ship, which I can't remember where they were from, ended up stopping and picking them and the guano up and then sailing back. So he got marooned on this island, which, from what we believe, is an island called Howland Island, where Amelia Earhart, I think, had to either she crashed or she had to
I don't know if it's known.
Land there or something.
They speculate it.
Yeah. And it's right on the equator, up in the middle of the Pacific. They're U.S., like, I don't even know what they would pacify them as because they're uninhabited, but the U.S. owns them. But the idea would be to sort of recreate that in a way. The Captain Albert Rand, my great-great-grandfather, he lived up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. So what I would plan to do was leave from there, sail around Cape Horn backwards, and then at least get to the island to either spot it, and if the weather is good enough, be able to anchor and at least go on shore, maybe scoop up a little sand, grab a rock, that sort of thing, and then sail north of Hawaii, get above maybe the 40th parallel, and then back down to Cape Horn.
I'm just looking at the map. That's unreal.
Yeah, well, it would be, around the 30,000 mile mark. So it'd be comparable distance wise. And, doubling Cape Horn is definitely tricky because you can go around Cape Horn at the best time of year, but you can't do it twice at the best time of year, and which would be like December, January. And it would just be sort of a different trip. I mean, part of me doesn't want to end my solo sailing career on just a circumnavigation of the Atlantic because I couldn't go through the Northwest Passage, Wow. But that's at the same time, that's also makes me rethink what I'm doing. Cause I also don't want to, I know that you can't just go out there because you're trying to feed your ego. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sort of battling with all these things in my brain at this point, but
man,
I don't know.
Unreal. What a cool story, though. With your great grandfather. I mean,
it could definitely, be a pretty interesting book where you could talk about the phosphates trade and also sort of try and tell his story. Although, we don't have a ton of information on it, but
in a way, recreate it.
Yeah, I mean, in his one of the funniest,
a lot of layers.
Yeah, they could all sort of intertwine with sort of my experience going out there, but in his. What do they call it in the newspaper after you die?
Obituary.
In his obituary, one of the quotes they had was when he was asked if he would rather go back to that island or go to prison in upstate New York, he'd choose prison. He said it was just awful. Like there were rats. I mean, we're talking an island with like no trees, and just being dropped off with probably things like hardtack, which is just rock hard biscuits, and probably salted pork. And yeah, it would have been pretty miserable. I don't think it would have been,
guarding this treasure, essentially.
Yeah, right.
With literally bird poop. It's
having
unreal.
To smell it too,
They're making more, every day.
Exactly.
Holy cow, what we do for things. Man,
so
that is wild. That is so if it wasn't sailing though, what do you think?
I definitely keep considering the PCT or the CDT. Mm-hmm. Those long distance trails, they are really fun.
Would you go after the Triple Crown then, you think?
I don't know. I've been researching the Continental Divide Trail more than anything, just because it seems a little wilder and a little less regulated for sure. I mean, I think you have to orienteer a lot of that because the trail
it's harder.
Yeah, it's pretty much all there. But, talking to people who have done all three, most people say they enjoyed the CDT the most as far as the experience of it. I mean, the AT these days, I guess, is sort of escalating into this roaming party in the woods in a lot of ways.
It's what it seems like.
Compared to, and not to say that it's still not, miles and miles of empty wilderness, but compared to what it was 10 years ago, I think it's changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
the CDT is definitely the most remote of them still.
Yeah.
More challenging. This family I was going to show you of 6, 3 girls, 1 boy, and then mom and dad. They just did it last year. They live right around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, family here, right here from Florida that's doing them all. They started with the PCT last summer, or year before.
Yeah.
2020 summer CDT, and the next summer going to finish it off with a party on the AT.
Nice.
They're all like ages 10 to 17.
Well, and think about all the experiences oh my gosh.
They're skipping, they're missing out on school for it, but they've got permission from the schools, and they're going
to learn a heck of a lot.
And they're from
more.
Right like down the road, like 45 minutes from here, man. It's crazy. And we had them on the show, and it was just they had a heck of an experience out there this year. But that's cool, yeah, because you've got this experience with the Appalachian Trail to
right. Well, and I the one thing about the AT I did think is the southbound trip would be very different, because usually the trail will weed out people that can't or are really probably are in it for the wrong reasons, so to speak. Because on my experience in 2012, by the halfway point, the majority of people had already dropped out. And so it just thins out. And so if you're starting in the north in, like, say, September, then most of the northbound hikers have already finished or have dropped out. So you're basically on a southbound trip following the fall colors and trying to sort of beat winter, I guess.
Oh, but, man, you think you could beat winter starting that late? That's
I don't know, because I've never talked to any southbounders about what time they left.
I just
and
had
all
a
that
friend
stuff.
do it this year.
Oh, okay.
Southbound.
When did he leave? In July?
July.
Oh, okay,
yep,
yeah.
Because of COVID. His plan was to go north starting in March, or April, but that couldn't happen.
Right.
But southbound July, I think he did it in 3 months and 30 days, like a day under 4 months.
Yeah. Wow.
If I'm not mistaken. So,
hey, well, should I just very briefly finish where I went on that trip?
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, because I know, no, it's all right. I was like, oh man, maybe we'll have to do a 2-part or something. But as I was going south, and my brain is sort of losing it a little, trying to figure out what I was going to do, halfway in between the Azores and the Cape Verde Islands, I start getting into just way less wind, more motoring. The temperature's starting to skyrocket, and then I'm entering the area where, like, the hurricanes are born. So these huge thunderstorms are coming off, and they're called tropical waves. And if they start to rotate, then they basically turn into a hurricane. So I'm crossing that path, and I'm really starting to sort of question what I'm doing, and I'm just getting further and further away. But at that point, I can no longer really cross the Atlantic, because there's so many hurricanes that just keep popping up. And that's when I think I hit, like, sort of the psychological low point. Was my water started going, the level of that was going down. So I was sort of finding myself in the situation I was in on the last trip. This time I still had the same pump, a new one. But I was basically experiencing something that I'd never felt, which was just this sort of inkling that I was actually starting to lose my mind. Where I remember one day specifically where it started raining, and it's super hot, and I was motoring, and the engine on that boat is pretty loud, so it sort of takes over everything. It's very hard to sleep, do anything, because it's just that going on. And so it's raining, and I'm down below, and I can't catch any of this water because it's got so much Sahara dust in it. It's those bacteria. So I'm in this situation where I'm really far away from home. I can't get off of this boat. It's raining, so I'm trying to be down below so I'm not getting rained on. And the engine is just cranking away and it's hot. And I'm literally like almost lose it. And I go up and I'm standing up on that deck. And I still to this day remember just being up there and thinking just for a split second, like about jumping off. And I was just, it was the weird feeling. It was the only time I ever felt like I wasn't in control of the thoughts that were going through my brain. And that was the point where I was like, okay, I got to go back. Like I have to. So I basically went down and came up with the game plan of, go a little further south, almost to the equator, and then head back, sort of out of the hurricane belt and wait until just about the tail end of September. So it was sort of safe, I guess. But it was like this tipping point because before that, I was still sort of in limbo wondering, if I'll go around the world again or maybe I'll go around backwards. And it was just the strangest, like my brain just started feeling more and more off. And of all the time I've been out at sea, I've never experienced that. I've never had any thought that like maybe I could actually lose my mind out there. And that was the only time I ever actually felt like if I don't come up with like a solid game plan and actually, be heading somewhere, like I will actually lose my mind. And I've read enough stories of accounts of people that have, and I've met people that have come back from sea and you can tell they're pretty off. And I never once ever thought that was going to be something I would be susceptible to. But on this trip, oh man, it was, I will never, like right now I'm picturing myself standing up on that deck and I was just up on the bow and I'm sort of holding on to this thing. And for whatever reason, it kept going through my head to like jump off and the boat's moving. So if I jumped off, obviously like it would be over, but
there would be nothing you could do.
No, yeah, the boat would just keep going and I'd be sort of stuck there. But yeah, it was just this weird apex mentally, that I sort of had to break free from. And then, yeah, I mean, I was really lucky on the return from the equator to South Carolina, where the boat is now. For whatever reason, I went underneath Hurricane Teddy and a couple others. And then when I did my cut to go across towards the Caribbean, basically right across the hurricane belt, the hurricane season just paused for like 2 weeks. The whole time I was going across, it went from being the busiest hurricane season to nothing. And then as soon as I got there, the hurricanes started coming out of the Gulf again. It was weird.
That's a hell of a story.
Right? And that was, I could draw that out quite a bit, but that was sort of the crux of what sort of ended that trip. And I don't know, there were definitely amazing things that I saw down there, especially sailing between Africa and the Caribbean, where these hurricanes are developing. I got to see sort of the actual, how it looks, what these cloud formations do. But I was in a race to sort of get back. And I just knew, I was like, I'm going to literally go crazy in not a good way out here if I stay.
Without a direction or a goal.
Yeah. Because once I made that choice, then all of a sudden those thoughts were gone. But I think it was just the idea of being in limbo out there and being stuck that it was slowly a ticking time bomb in my head. So
does that scare you now?
It worries me a little as far as attempting another big trip. But it's almost like I'd rather know that that's a possibility. So it'll at least make me aware that it's there. And so if I was ever out there and, that started, like say I went around Cape Horn, got in the Pacific and all of a sudden I start losing it.
And it was a worse situation.
Yeah. I'd be like, okay, let's go to Tahiti then. We'll just go there, So I don't know. It was probably one of the most surprising parts of that voyage to just have something like that happen that I never expected at all. It was something else, but
you're pretty mentally strong. Yeah, I mean, you have to be
Thank
to
you.
be out there. Yeah, I mean, you
I don't hear that very often.
because you're out there alone.
Yeah, right.
No, but for real, you just to be able to face the ocean like this takes a lot of mental strength and fortitude and perseverance. And like I that's probably the biggest reason it scares me is like I don't trust myself out there with that amount of
Unknown.
I don't know how I would fare mentally. So
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll make an agreement with you right now. Once sort of the world does get back to normal and you can like fly to other countries and it's no big deal, I will get us on like a delivery from the Bahamas to Florida. That's an overnight. It's like 90 miles.
it's overnight.
If you're going from Bimini, yeah, I think it's only like 90 miles or something. Real offshore passage, Gulf Stream,
That would
wicked
be awesome.
storms. You never know.
That'd be awesome. That would be so much fun.
Oh,
Can I ask you one last question?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm sorry. This
No,
has
I got all the time in the world.
and this is definitely like Hollywood, Hollywood mindset coming in, American mindset. Are pirates a problem?
They are in certain areas, but typically that is going to be within, less than 100 miles offshore.
Less than 100 miles, and probably in certain places too.
The biggest hotspots are Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, places like that. It still happens a lot. Obviously on the Somali coast, is it the Gulf of Aden up there by, Yemen and all that, the Red Sea. That's a place you don't want to sail for sure. The Amazon off the coast of Liberia. But again, if you're 100 miles out, that's a long way for a band of, pirates to try and come out. Cause it's not like the olden days where they were crossing the Atlantic as on these sailing ships and terrorizing the Caribbean. I mean, these guys are on motor, old trawlers and stuff
boat.
with little tiny little speedboats that they can put in the water, and then they'll go take tankers and things like that. But if you're trying to cruise and do like the Suez Canal from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean, I mean that's some seriously rough territory to go through. And you're sitting duck out there. If you're just a sailboat, obviously the people are going to target you, because if you own a sailboat, there's probably some valuables on it. And pirates, most of them, from what I understand, they're just going to basically kill everybody, because they're going to sink the boat afterwards. Because then there's just no evidence of anything. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I don't know. I think the only real pirate story I know of was Sir Peter Blake, who was like a big time round the world racer. He was a Kiwi, and I think he was like America's Cup and everything. He was on some boat somewhere near the Amazon Delta, I believe. And this was 10, 15, 20 years ago. But he was with a bunch of people, and they got boarded by pirates. And I think he went down below for a shotgun and came back up, and they just started to unload. I don't know if they killed everybody on the boat, but I think they definitely killed him. So it's a threat. The only thing you can really do is basically put your hands up and hope to God they don't kill you. But I don't know. I always stay way offshore, and anybody brave enough to come out there probably has respect for everybody else out there. I mean, I've had some weird encounters, but I've never.
You got time to tell us?
Yeah.
a weird
Yeah.
encounter?
Well, and I just told this story on TikTok, actually. Today it keeps coming up, and I keep telling people it's not a big issue. I was maybe 400 miles off the coast of Brazil, headed north. So I'd been on the boat for maybe 230, 240 days. And I see this little, just looks like a little fishing boat or trawler or something like that.
This was on your most recent trip?
No, this was on the Round the World trip.
Around the world, yeah.
And I see him way off on the horizon, maybe 6 miles away, and he's headed that way, and I'm headed the other way. And then I'm sort of watching him because, it's something new to see.
Right.
And all of a sudden he does a 90-degree turn and he starts heading towards me. So I go down below. I look on the AIS, and there's no signal for him. And then I call on the VHF radio and there's no chatter back. And usually out in the ocean, you don't like purposefully approach another boat without at least calling them on the radio or something like that. And it was really light wind, so I'm barely moving at all, maybe like 2 knots, so like walking pace. And I don't have an engine at that point because I'd run out of fuel. And I'm basically sort of sitting there watching it, and he's getting closer and closer, gets within like 2 miles. And so I know he's definitely coming towards me. It's not like a fishing boat that's just like picking up nets or something like that. And as he gets closer, I'm looking through the binoculars, and there's just rust streaks, and this thing looks like just beat up, rough and tumble. And I'm not seeing any fishing gear, any of the telltale signs of, a working boat. I'm just seeing this bow that's sort of chugging along at me. And I'm thinking like, wow, okay, this could be it. And I had my shotgun down below, but it wasn't loaded. And I'm starting, the heart was starting to beat a little faster.
Yeah. Did you go get it?
I thought about it. And then I also thought about going down and trying to pop out of the forward hatch, like with different clothes on. That's an old trick from Joshua Slocum, one of the first guy who sailed around the world back in the 1800s. He would do that to make it seem like there are more people on the boat. Yeah. And I've heard of other people doing that as well. But I'm just watching this thing. I'm like, God, it can't be that. But maybe it is. And my brain starts, going crazy and gets within like a half mile. And I'm still seeing no telltale signs that this is an actual fishing boat. And it's just looking worse and worse. And I think, okay, well, I don't have engine, so I'm not maneuverable. There's no reason to load this shotgun because what am I going to do? I mean, this is a power boat. He just smashed into me. So I just sort of sat there and I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. But he kept coming and coming, and I'm getting more and more worried. And he gets within about 50 feet and does a turn. And on the back, there's like 3 dudes, and they're all holding up tuna. And they're basically shouting, "You buy, you buy." They're a fishing boat from Brazil, Recife, I think. And literally, I could barely even talk. I was so filled with adrenaline, just because on the whole voyage I've been by myself, and any ships I saw were just passing, And then all of a sudden to have this sort of attention, and oh my gosh, and the one guy he had a camera, and I would kill to have that picture that he took, because he would probably see my eyes, but 10 times bigger than they are right now. It was just scary. I mean, it just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen out there. It's the only time I've ever had anything like that. I mean, the only other weird thing was a few days or weeks prior to that, I came across a drifting oil tanker. It was at night. It was showing 2 red lights, which means not under command. Not a single other light on this thing. It was like maybe 600 to 800 feet long. And it was the only reason I saw it besides a red light was that it was blocking the stars as I got closer. But for all intents and purposes, there might not have been anybody on that boat. And it's just this huge oil tanker just floating in the middle of the
Would there be any way to explore it? You don't have that capability.
I thought about it, but at the same time I was kind of like, well, I don't know what they're doing and what's going on here. The engines weren't on, and it was essentially just drifting. So I just figured it's nighttime. I'm just going to keep going. But I did envision in my head, I was like, I could hook up a tow line and take this as salvage. It's got to be worth something. In the scrap heap or something like that. I don't know. Those were some of the oddball things I've seen out there. But people they're like, have you seen UFOs or anything like that? I've definitely seen some weird stuff in the sky. But on this last trip, I did see some of the Starlink satellites, and I thought that was a UFO forever, because it was like 1, 2, 3, and then doom.
Yeah.
All in a perfect line. I was like, oh my God, it's like a ship up there. It's dropping things off.
Wow.
And it was, somebody finally said, it's probably Starlink, bud. Thank Elon Musk.
Yeah, for real. I saw those get dropped off the other day, another round of them. Wow. So I'm sure more of the weird stuff happens when you're in towns and stuff, just dealing with people. I mean, there's got to be some wacky folks in this kind of moving around the world on boats, subculture, just like there is in the RV world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or like bikepacking world, it's like hit or miss. You see someone else crossing paths on the road, they're going the other way, and it could be, you know, just someone biking. It could be anything going on there.
Right.
There's all kinds of people out there.
Well, and typically, like in the sort of cruising world, you know, you go from marina to marina, and there's people where their boats are moving, and they're what you'd call cruisers, and so they're obviously they have to keep their boats in working order and all this sort of stuff. Then you've got like your liveaboards where it's, you know, they might not move, they just live on a boat, you know, at a marina or something. And then there's another sector, which you don't run into, at least I haven't too much, but it's where like there's a boat when you first see it, and it's usually on anchor, and it looks like it might have been sitting there for 20 years. You know, maybe it's leaning to one side a bit, but there'll actually be a person living on it. And definitely interesting characters if you ever get a chance to talk to.
There's one right by my house.
Any of these guys, yeah.
Right in the water. There's all kinds of stuff tied to the deck, the top.
Yeah.
Buckets and
tarps going, you know, shredded tarps over the top of unshredded ones. And I chat with some of these people, and it's always interesting to hear, you know, how they got there and all that sort of stuff. What I typically check out at is when they start talking about wanting to, you know, sail the boat around the world and stuff like that. And I kind of take a look around. It's going to take a little work, I think.
Some prep.
Happy to help. But yeah, I mean, there's all facets of people out there on and you're right. It's like this sort of subculture.
So cool, man.
It's pretty cool. I really enjoy it. And I've always said, if anybody's ever lonely living in a house somewhere, just buy a boat and put it in a marina, because there's just people everywhere, and you can't get away from them. It's great.
It's great.
They come over. When I try and do my podcast, sometimes 2 or 3 times I'll have people come up and they knock on the hall, and it's like, hey, yeah, we're doing a podcast. Give us 20 minutes. And I keep it in. I don't edit it out or anything.
I love it.
It's a common occurrence.
Well, tell me, where can folks listen to the podcast?
So I've tried to make it easy. Everything is Sailing into Oblivion across the board. So the podcast is called the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, and it's on all the normal ones, Spotify and all that sort of stuff. And then, I mean, recently one of my little cousins had me set up a TikTok account, because I had all this vertical filmed footage of like me just talking while I was on my big trip that I couldn't really use for anything else because it's in that vertical format. And I was showing him some of the videos. He was like, dude, you got to do it. And so I set up a TikTok thing, and it's like all this old footage I never thought I was going to use. I'm just throwing it up on there, and people are eating it up. So I'm just going to keep putting it out.
Are they really?
Yeah. I mean,
awesome.
it went up to tens of thousands of followers really quickly, and it was pretty cool. And so I'm just trying to answer questions and you know, give people the content that they're looking for. But yeah, YouTube, any of it, it's all Sailing into Oblivion. And I guess the only thing I really want to plug, if that's cool, is the audiobook. The audio version of Sailing into Oblivion's out on Audible. You can get it on Amazon.
I'm getting it.
Nice.
I'm getting it. I want to.
Well, I'll tell you what, I can give you a promo code.
No. That's you gotta support you.
Well, I appreciate it. No. But yeah, so that's all. That's all I got.
You can tell a story, man. You can tell a hell of a story.
You make it easy, Mason. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have started doing my podcast at all had I not. I think it was the one that I did with you that I was like, yeah, I think, you know, that could be something I could do. And it's just, obviously I don't have sort of, the people that I usually target for my interviews obviously are people that are around me within proximity, just because I like to do them, you know, face to face. But it's typically the people that are, I want to call them the beginnings of the adventures, because they're the ones that have just sold their house or done, you know, changed their life and been like, I'm getting a boat and I'm going for it. And so I don't know, it's kind of cool. And hopefully maybe it'll, you know, 5 years from now, some of them will want to come back on if I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, guess what we did?
That's awesome.
That could be pretty cool. So
I will say I love podcasts because like what other medium in today's world do you get to have a really in-depth conversation with somebody? Yeah. And then that conversation is out in the world for people to interact with you and cross paths with you. And, it builds this little community around it. It's been 6 years of doing this, not me doing every one of them, but the last 2.5 years for me. And the previous host did it for quite a few years, but it's just cool to get just the random email on a Tuesday of like, wow, this podcast has changed my life. Or it's so rewarding. I my son, I don't know if he'll ever even care about this stuff, but I'll be like, your dad had all these conversations. He didn't do all this stuff, but he talked to these people and got to help tell these stories and give it to the world. And it's definitely a joy.
Well, yours is dangerous for me because I start listening to some of them and I'm like, ooh, that sounds fun. I could do that. Because I've never been hung up on like, oh, I want to be the first to do this or that. I want the experience, and
I want stories at the end of the day.
Biking, oh man, biking and running, and I think the ocean for me is always just going to be sailing because the thought of like rowing across, I'd be like, oh, what? Where are the sails? You'd be kidding me. But
I gotta have my cocktail.
Yeah, the hiking. Oh man, I don't know. Whenever I listen, I'm just thinking to myself,
that's cool.
That sounds like I could do something like that. But who knows? I'm sure we'll have to we'll sit down again at some point. But this has been fantastic. It's been great to meet you first in person.
It's rare that I get to meet these folks. They're always joining from random places in the world. You know what I mean?
Right.
I was talking to somebody in, the Netherlands last week, and it'll be Norway the next week. It'll be Africa the next week, and so it's like it's not gonna, probably never meet these people in person, but you get a conversation and you feel like you know them, a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like we're friends. You may not feel that way.
I feel that way. I feel that way. But
how long are we up to?
2 hours.
Oh wow,
15 minutes.
Felt like the blink of an eye. Well, that's great, and
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Look, staying healthy isn't easy. Watching your diet, hitting the gym, avoiding stress. But a good night's rest helps boost your overall health and wellness. And it couldn't be easier. The new Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed is the only bed that effortlessly adjusts and responds to both of you. The result? You wake up ready for anything. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep. And now, the new Queen Sleep Number 360 P5 Smart Bed is only $17.99. Save $600. Only for a limited time. To learn more, go to sleepnumber.com.